Hi, and welcome to our module on shape regions/visual indicators. Just a quick note, this does require administrative rights, just like diagram template creation requires administrative rights. Shape regions are visual indicators that allow the display of different object properties or associations in a variety of interesting ways. You can use shape regions to have an object's color altered due to a property. You can have a pop-out for an association. You can have an icon appear based on a property or even a gauge. So it really depends on the purpose of the diagram, and you can have the same object types on different diagram templates look different based on the way the palettes have been configured. Here are a few shape region examples. The top left diagram is a process flow with shape regions on process objects. The bottom right is an application architecture diagram with shape regions on applications. I'll go into that one in a little bit more detail. The top right is a technology diagram, and the bottom left is an impact analysis diagram that shows me an entity on the right. So I'm going to start with this one. It shows me an entity, and then it has relationships from entities to processes, processes to roles, and the connections between them. The first one shows me CRUD information, and the next one shows me RACI. So that specifically shows me information about the association, while on the other diagrams, I have mostly properties, some associations being called out like roles here for processes, and everywhere else, the views are of different properties shown in different ways. But you have that flexibility to either show properties or associations or information about the associations themselves. Here's a list for your reference of different types of shape regions. You can find this in our help files. And this shows you the different types of shape regions that are available. You can get an idea of what's possible. I always recommend that you review existing diagram examples that ship with a product so that you can get an idea of what you'd like to see, how you'd like to see it, the type of shape region that would show you what it is that you're trying to display. So it's always good to just look at examples that someone else might have done to get an idea. You'll notice on this list, a lot of the shape regions are for properties and a few for associations, and then there are a few other ones like explosions or drill downs and labels, but most of them are about properties, so keep that in mind. Now let's talk about shape regions in practice. What you can see here is an application object called Partner Accelerator, and at a glance, you may not be sure how many things are shape regions. Maybe the obvious ones are the four, so the three icons on the left, the number 220 on the top right corner, and that's your four. There's actually 6 shape regions here. The shape regions are criticality, contract type, and enterprise standards, so we all knew those were shape regions. These happen to be property visualization using reference property. What that means is, depending on the value that someone picks for one of these fields, we want to display a different icon. Partner Accelerator, it's the name of this object, and that happens to be a shape region as well as the number of users, and those are just property value. What that means is we're displaying exactly what exists in the field, so we're not altering it, we're not showing it with a different symbol or anything like that. And the last one is category, which happens to be peach. And that's a property visualization using reference property as well. So depending on the category chosen, we have a different color. Now you may be wondering why name had to be a shape region and not just displayed here. Well, one reason is because the category takes up the whole area of this shape, of this object. When you think of shape regions, it's kind of like layering things on top of one another, like a pie. So you have these different layers displaying things. And so if you need to display the name of something when you've already covered the whole box with something else, then you need to put that in as a shape region. So that goes on top. Here's another example of shape regions in practice. Perhaps you think these are 5 shape regions here, and let's find out how many we actually have. So we have criticality, that's actually the little circle around the computer symbol. The category, that's actually the computer symbol. Those are property visualizations using reference property. So just like in the application, we're saying depending on which field is chosen, we'll have a different display. Virtualized, that's another one. That's number 3. That happens to be a property visualization using palette value. So a palette value is something referencing something on the palette. And the last one here is the environment. An environment is a property visualization using reference property. So there are just 4 shape regions here. The name is not a shape region. We're actually displaying the name itself. One reason for that is because we are not taking over the whole shape with the color like we did with the application. And also the icons are outside of the shape. It may be a little hard to tell, but the top left corner of this technology is right here where my highlighter is. And so we're not adding any icons into the midst of this object. And so therefore, the name can just be the normal default name of this object. Now, in order to create shape regions or edit existing ones, you would need to open up the diagram where that object exists that you wish to modify. Right-click on the object, and in our case, we're going to work with a technology object. So right-click on the technology object, edit properties to be able to choose the shape regions. And you'll notice right away all the shape regions that are currently there, and you can create your own or modify an existing one. So the first thing you need to do is choose the region type and behavior that you're working with. So in this case, we have property visualization using reference property. So this is going to allow us to choose a category, and it will look different based on the value chosen for the category. So what we've done is we've gone through the behavior here, and we've specified, depending on which value is chosen, which icon we wish to have, which symbol. And the symbols can be brought in from any tool. So remember from a previous module, all the icons, all the pictures, images that we use in CW Suite live in the gallery. So you would open up the gallery component of the CW Suite and import images in from wherever you might have them. Once you have them in here, then you're able to actually assign them to different pieces of your template design. Once you've chosen the type of shape region and the behavior, you need to specify the physical placement. Now, where I have the little circle highlighted, that's your 0, 0 point. So if you wish something to be to the left of that, then your location on the left should be a minus number. If you wish for it to be above the top, it would be a minus. If it's below, then it would be a plus. And then, of course, the width and height of the symbol itself as well is available. Now, you can either do millimeters or you can do percent for all of these things. And you can also dock it. So if this is a shape region that needs to always stay on the right side, you can dock it on the right side. I like to keep the width and height for my symbols to be some sort of real proportion, like millimeters, not just a percent, because if it's something that's a set size, like 8 by 8 millimeters, no matter how big the box becomes, if someone drags it out or resizes it, it will not change its shape or proportion. So I recommend doing it that way. Of course, you can play with it for your own diagram templates, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. Lastly, the text. So the text needs to be placed on the shape region, either displayed or not displayed. So you can choose whether or not something should be displayed. It's done much in the same way as you would determine where text goes for an object. The placement is very similar. And if you don't wish to see anything, just uncheck the display box. And when you're done, check your results by dragging an object instance onto the diagram, and then you can actually see how it looks with all of its properties, and of course the size of the object as well. And that's one thing also to keep in mind, that your shape regions must fit within whatever the parameters you've set for your object in the first place. So when you define the diagram templates and how big something should be, think about the shape region within those parameters. So we're going to do this little exercise to add a swim lane to a process object. So you'll see the first thing you do is you choose what it is, and this is in association for a role, and then we will place it somewhere on the diagram, and we will display the text and make sure we list the object. And the shape will look like that. So we've gone live into the tool now, and we're in the swim lane diagram that we created in a previous exercise, and we will go ahead and choose the activity object and then editing the properties. I already have a role here, but I'm going to leave this alone. I'm going to create a new role which will be above this box, kind of like a little swim lane. to first create a shape region, I click on the Add button at the bottom right corner. And for the region type, this is my big place of choice. I choose an association type. And you'll notice a couple of these things say custom. Just hold that thought. We'll just choose the regular association type for now. One thing that's really important about association types is to make sure it says to display only when it exists. Otherwise, you will always have the word role there. And maybe that's what you wish to have, but I usually want to see only if it exists. You can also say when it doesn't exist. So that would be basically saying, you know, if I don't have an association, display something, and then you could do that as well, but maybe have a different color or a different symbol or something. But when a swim lane doesn't exist, it'll be a red flag. So now we'll say when it exists. The style, just like for an object, you can have styles for shape regions. So we will look for one for role. So here's a role, standalone, shape region, style. Once you've specified things in here, let's go to the region tab and place it somewhere. So again, I want it to be starting all the way from the left. So we'll say 0 from the left. And from the top, I want it to be above my symbol. So I'm actually going to say -6, but not percent. I want -6 millimeters. And the height will be 6 millimeters because I want that to be the height of the object. And now I can either do 100% or I can actually do fill, which means it will fill the shape for me. So that's just kind of a little bit of a shortcut. If you just choose fill, this becomes grayed out and it does the whole space. And now I go to the text tab and I do wish to display the name. If I didn't, I would turn it off. You can see the word application goes away. So I do wish to display it. And I also want this to be clickable. Perhaps that will allow me to click on the application object and get its details. So once I've specified all that, I'm going to hit OK. One last thing to note here is that you could also do vertical text. And you can grow the region to fit text. So if you have an association with lots of things, you can do this. Of course, if I were to do that right now, it would cover my whole object. So I wouldn't want to do that. But perhaps if it's an association inside the box, if you have a much bigger space, not just above or below, you can definitely grow region to fit text and be able to display more information. So I'm going to click OK and OK again. And now if I have roles for some of these objects, they should appear. Sometimes it takes a moment to refresh, but if there are no roles, then nothing will appear. So the way we can test this out, and actually here is one, deliver order. So it looks like there's a role. And we can actually see what's going on. Let's go to associations, roles. And there's an accountant role here. Okay, great. And now if you saw that it flashed, we can actually do a little bit of troubleshooting and see what happened. So perhaps it wasn't oh, I know what we did. We did associated applications, and really we meant to do associated roles. So that goes to the fact that it's really important to make sure that you choose which association type you choose. And so now for the style, we just need to go back and choose the style. So we did everything else correctly. We just chose the wrong association because the application association is the first one listed. So always be careful when you're setting up your shape regions that you're actually choosing the thing that you wish to have, and you check your work, hit OK. And now you can see we have accountant right there. So we'll hit F6 to zoom in on that object. There's our accountant. And because I said I want it to be clickable, I can actually double click on accountant. So when I hover over it, a little line appears and I can get more information about accountant, and I can look at associated processes and it will show me some of the associated processes for accountant. Of course, I can hit F4, send it to the screen, see if there are any other ones. I don't see any other associated roles here. And if they existed, they would show up right away. So if we were to just quickly go to record order associations roles, click on a new link and find something now. Let's say we choose business analyst this time. Close this dialog. You'll see it appears right away. So that is a quick way to make sure that your shape region is working as you desired. Now there's another type of shape region called custom. So there's a custom shape region and enhancement that you might have noticed when we were going through and filling out our shape region choices in a palette. So they're called custom because they allow you to determine what will be shown in the properties. So you can actually specify a string of information. So for instance, you can specify a custom property value or a custom association type, and you may want to display three values from a process object, for instance, the freeze level, the category, and the validated as it's shown here. So this is an example of how you can display this information. And this is a string. So this shows the freeze level is freeze level 2. The category is derived logical process, and validated is true. So this is helpful in those situations where you have multiple things you wish to display, and you'll just put them on the diagram in one lane as opposed to taking up lots of space on the shape. And maybe you wish to display the number of licenses and licenses used for an application. So here I had 10, I'm using 3. A little bit of information. This is how you actually go about doing it. So you would open up the object on the palette. Once again, in this case, we're choosing a process, and it happens to be property value custom. So we're choosing the property value custom shape region. And then we can go through and add these pieces in. So there's a symbol, and we can add the text in. So you can add a text string in. And then the property, I always recommend adding in the spaces in between and using your brackets. You can have text with square brackets or whichever brackets you like to denote, the beginning and the ending of a field. You can specify all that, and here is an example of what that looks like. Freeze level, level 1, category, logical process, validated is yes. And here we're actually seeing the systems that are associated to those processes as well as their categories. So that's another thing you can do. You can show information about an associated object, not just an associated object itself, but information about it. That's why we're calling this a custom shape region, because you get to choose what you display. And of course, you can make it clickable as well. And you can even show, what diagram something is on. Now let's do the exercise on custom shape regions. As you can see, we actually have 2 exercises here. One is for an object's properties, and one is for an association. And one thing I've done is I've actually wrote it out as if we're almost coding that shape region. So the very first one shows you text in blue, and then the thing we're choosing, whether it's a property or an association, in red. Same thing goes for the second one. So the text is in blue, and then the element of the object or the association is in red. So you can see the very first part at the top has text. So C:\space is the text, and that's referring to the category of a process. And then we choose the property category, and then a little bit more text of space, ampersand space, IMP: space, and then the implementation property. And then at the bottom, we also have text in blue, and then the name of the associated organization, and then the number of resources for the association. And now we'll go into the tool and see what that looks like. And also, we'll need to make sure that the region is clickable on organization so that we can easily access all that information. So I have the exercise open that we created in Module 3. This is a swim lane diagram, and we're going to work with a deliver order process. So we're going to work with a deliver order object, and we'll open up the activity object from the palette. When we open that up, we can actually see the existing shape region. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add the very first one for the custom shape region. So it'll be property value custom. Custom simply allows us to do a string of information. So let's go ahead and add text, and then the property, which will be the category, and we can do either category name or abbreviation. So let's do the whole name, and then we have a little bit more text, and then we have another property. So this property will be implementation, and this one we'll do as an abbreviation just to save a little bit of space on the diagram. For the text, I'm going to add C:\space, and here we'll do space, ampersand, space, IMP: space. So really just the way you want it to look. And at any point you can remove the elements, whether you want to remove just the selected element or all. So you can always remove and add elements into here. And now for the location, I want this to be at the bottom below the object. So if you recall from our previous explanations and examples, we'll do 0 from the left, 100% from the top. We'll do 100% width, and the height will be 6 millimeters. So now it's always good to be able to see where that will be placed just by giving it a border with region for a moment, and then you can get rid of that. So when you do the border, you can actually see it's down here at the bottom. And now I'll remove that and just do style transparent region. You can see all of that and hit OK. So we've done the first one. Now let's do the second one. The second one is for an association type, custom properties, meaning it's an association type where we also get to choose other information. And it's going to be for an associated organization. And this one I'd like to place above, so we'll just do 0 from the left, minus 6 millimeters from the top, which means I would like the height to be 6 millimeters. And the width I want to be 100%. And now we'll do the same thing as before. So we have text, and then we have the property of the target, and then a little bit more text, and another property of a target. So now the text here will be as follows. And then here it's space, colon, space. And then we actually need one more text, which will be closing the square bracket. And now for the information, what I want to add here is on the organization, I want to have the name. And then I also want to have the number of resources, like that. And I only want to display this information when there's an association that exists. You get to choose that. And let's again give it a border so we can see where that is. Okay, so at the top, so that's fine. Actually, it's an associated organization, so we can give it an organization style, organization swim lane style, or an organization standalone style. You can sort of choose which one you prefer. And finally, on the text tab, let's make sure that it's clickable. So that will allow us to click on the organization object for a little bit more detail. At one point, we also had an association to a role above, which you can see right there, but it's currently turned off, so that will not impede our organization swim lane. Now, when we hit OK, we should be able to see this information for both. So here we see the activity and implementation, and this shows me the organization. And I can actually double click on that, and that will bring up the organization properties. Going back to the slides, I have added this information in here so you can see what was needed for the setup, and you can also see the results. So to summarize, our shape regions allow you to display information about the object itself or its association in a variety of fun ways. You should use shape regions to call attention to specific information so that it's easy to follow the diagrams, and so the diagrams are also not cluttered. Thank you so much for your attention.